Hello everybody, welcome back to another Woodworking Wisdom. And today we are looking at magic wands. So I've commandeered the lathe and we're going to turn a little magic wand. Also got some other ideas for you guys to have a look at. Today we've got a bit of a difference behind the desk there. We've got Steph on questions, Jason's doing the cameras, because the guys are on holiday. And on that note, I'd just like to wish Craig a very happy birthday. This is big day today. So happy birthday to Craig. Okay, so first things first, I've set the lathe up. I've got my chuck on. There's the SK114 there, and I've got the like the pin jaws on that one. Okay, I've got my blank ready. And if we can come overhead here, Jason, I just want to show you a couple of things that we've done in preparation. Okay. Now, this is quite a long, thin piece of timber. So we looked carefully at the grain and we got this grain running right the way through. Okay. One I picked out earlier, I'd got ready, and then I spotted there was this little knot just here. And we're going to be putting a bit of shape into this. This is going to be where the handle sits, where it's held in the chuck. And we don't want that kind of weak spot around this knot. You can see where the grain kind of dips out that way. If I'm starting to try and roll a bead around that or something, it could be potentially a weak spot and it could go snap. So just to show you on our where we've trimmed this from, this is a piece of mulberry, and people will really want to know that information if they're looking to buy a magic wand. They're really interested in the the materials it's made from. So this is a piece of mulberry, and you can see where we cut off the edge of the board, these little knots coming in here and here. So we've just carefully selected. We've had to come a little bit further into the board to get this nice straight grain to be just the job for our magic wands. So we can put them to one side now. So like I say, a piece of mulberry, and it's quite thin in section. We've got probably about 12 mil, perhaps 10, 12 mil. So this is going to be, I want to keep this square where we're holding it in the chuck, and we're going to taper this down and put some little designs on it. Okay. So just check in which way I'm going to hold it, and it's going to go that way into the chuck. I've got these long pin jaws. They're going to give me a bit more support and help to keep it straight when we come to center it up on the other end. Just maneuvering it around so we've got those jaws clamping right in the middle there on all four faces. And you could use the pen jaws. Again, that's going to give you a really nice long bit of support. And I'm just kind of centering this by eye. That's not too far off. Just going to tweak it over a little touch. Lock that one off. And then we can tighten that one there. Again, just going to tweak that. Make sure we're nicely held, and we don't want to put too much pressure on with our tailstock center. Okay, I've used the ring center on this one, and that's going to help keep all these fibers together on the end. Whereas, your kind of normal tailstock center or live center has that very pointy end, and that's going to potentially split the fibers up through this this little piece of timber. So this is going to keep it all nice and held tightly. If you're interested in these ring centers, there's a lovely little video online. Jason did quite a few years back, but it explains how useful those ring centers are, can be, and why we use them. So let's get to turning. I'm going to swap my tool rest out, get myself a bigger tool rest, so we don't have to keep moving the saddle around. So we've got this nice long tool rest, and that's just about right. Oh, look at that. So just below center, I'm just checking that my jaws aren't going to hit on this side. A little bit close, so I'm just going to give myself a little bit more room to wiggle there. Just like normal, if you've got any questions, please ask them in. Okay, so have we got a question?
Yeah, we've got a question here, slightly off topic for Jason. It's to do with Veritas chamfer guides. Do they fit the rider block planes, or are they only for Veritas block planes?
Oh, it's a question. Oh,
So, say into the mic.
I might go get it in a second. Just have a quick look. I'm pretty sure it will only fit the rider block plane because I think we need to check the thread. All right, so I might be able to have a quick look for you in a minute, Cliff. All right.
So Jason's just saying that he'd have to check the thread on that. And also Jason's got a video tomorrow. He's doing a tenon or a mortise, sorry. And he can go through that with you tomorrow. So make sure you tune in tomorrow, and he'll have a look at that with you. Good stuff. So I've just turned this over. Make sure we're not going to foul anywhere here or here. Goggles on, that's really important. So I'm just going to pop my goggles on here. And then lathe speed down. I've put a new project on the lathe, so we're bringing the speed right down to 0. We can turn the machine on, and then I'm going to creep it up. Nice thin bit of material this, so I can take that speed up quite fast. I'm going around 2,500-ish. Okay. So rough and gouge. This is quite a thin piece of timber, like I keep saying. We need to be a bit careful with our rough and gouge. We're not taking big cuts. We're just gently tickling off that hard corner. I'm going to drop my tool rest just a touch because I feel like the handle's a bit high. And we are just tickling off that corner. So getting a little bit of vibration. I think we're going to have to move across to the skew in a moment. I just want to knock off the hard corners. Using my thumb there as a little deflector. And it's not liking that. So down with the rough and gouge, and I'm going to come in with the skew. That means tool rest comes up a touch. And we're just going to present the skew at 45 degrees to the project, up on its edge a little, and just do that skimming cut. And once I've knocked the corners off, I'm going to come along and I'm going to support the back of the workpiece with my hand. So nice, gentle skimming cuts to start off with. Now, let me just see if I can support the back of that. Just stop it vibrating in the middle. So I'm just really lightly touching on the back of the project. I'm not gripping it, and I'm making sure that my arm sleeve is clear of the chuck area. Okay, so you can rest your elbow up on the back of the lathe here, just reaching round and taking this little cut. And that's behaving itself a bit better down that end now. And you could do something like this in sections. So you could turn the handle and the wand in 2 separate hits. And that hand around the back there is just trying to dampen some of that vibration so we get a nice clean cut. And once all those corners have come off, we're going to get a really nice smooth cut. Okay, so we got our first question.
So Maria in Wales is asking, did she cream it, or did you say that these ones are going to be scroll sawed first?
I was going to do a little scroll saw in the handle, but I think we're going to revisit the ones and do. So I make two different types of ones. I make like turned ones, and also I kind of hand shape some of them. We're going to look at that at the end. I've got a few examples, but yeah, we did talk about potentially scroll sawing some of the handle and perhaps filling it with a resin or having a little void in there. But we will get to that, Maria. That's not today, but we will have a look at another video.
We are getting a lot of positive feedback about the ones though. Everybody's like it. Frederick is currently making one at the moment, so this is really
brilliant.
useful. And Sleeping Dog is watching with the sound off at the moment because he's on a film set, but he's looking forward to watching later.
Exciting.
For some tips with the sound on, which is great.
Good stuff. So you can see we're starting to knock these corners off. And we're getting a nice smooth cut up this end from that planing cut. Bit more work to do to taper this down, but we're nice and slowly. We don't want to push too hard with something like this because it is flexing. Okay, I'm getting a little bit of vibration through the lathe on a piece this long. Okay, so goggles back on. And hi to all the folks at home, all our regulars. Nice to hear from you today. And hopefully you can see what I'm doing there. I'm steadying the workpiece with my left hand. So just taking some of that bounce out of it, and then kind of not one-handed, I'm bringing my thumb over for a bit of control with my left hand and holding the skew right up on the steel here. So just trying to look to get that taper working. Taking more material off one end. Can be quite tricky to control, and just make sure you've taken off the worst of those sharp corners if you're supporting it like this. We don't want those 90-degree corners coming around and hitting us in the hand. So I did say that, didn't I, Maria, about doing the scroll sawing? Today, mostly in here, but we will do something like that because I do hand-shaped ones as well. We're going to touch on it at the end. But I haven't scroll sawed the handle on this one. So this is just the planing cut, and you want to keep going with this until you've got that nice taper to the wand. So I'm taking more off this end now, but trying to keep that line nice and straight. And trying to introduce that little taper. Okay, so another question.
So Frederick was a little late to the party today. He's asked to remind everybody what the wood was that you're using.
So this is a piece of mulberry. Okay, and if, like I say, if you're making wands, you know, those little details of knowing what the timber is, you know, that's going to make all the difference. If you can label it up that it's, you know, a bit of mulberry from Axminster, people really into those little details, and it will, you know, it will help sell the product.
And Skip from Florida is asking, what wood species would you recommend for wands?
So you want to keep that, depending on how thin you want to go, you want to make sure you've got that nice straight grain. So, you know, between all the timbers, there's not going to be massive differences. But, you know, you want to stay away from that kind of waney grain or perhaps things with burrs. They will be really good for shorter sections for things like handles. And, you know, the more decorative stuff I would keep for the handles. This one I'm doing as one piece. But, yeah, any of the timbers, you know, you don't want something too hard and waxy like, you know, a piece of olive or something like that, because then you're kind of fighting against it, putting too much pressure on, and you know, you could potentially come a cropper if it's too hard.
Would you be able to move your mic out a little bit?
Mic out.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that good? Thank you. So goggles are going back on. And we're just carrying on with this planing cut. And if you can see the vibration in that. I want to bring that taper right the way to the end here. And we can afford to go quite thin. That ring center is really doing its job well. I'm using my fingers on the back of the tool rest here, and I'm kind of gliding along there. Like I say, thumb on top of the skew, and we're just traveling along the rest. And pick up on that cut, so getting the bevel rubbing, and then just picking up on that last cut. But I would say take your time with this. You don't want to rush it for the finish and for the shape. And that's coming in slowly. I don't want to take too much more off there, but we do want to go a little bit thin on the taper at this end. Just trying to keep that skew at the same angle all the way along, so we're not picking up on any lumps and bumps. And just having a little feel of the, well, that's pretty good. There's just a little one here I want to just tickle off. And we would carry that cut on. Now, if you've got a little lump or a little bump, pick up on that cut and just keep going. And with this natural taper, if you keep the chisel at the same angle, it will stop cutting. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to bring that shape in a little bit better. A bit more of a natural a curve to it, or taper, I should say. Good. So we can see that starting to taper down. A couple of other things we want to do before we mess around with it in the chuck. I'm going to put some almost like a square bead, I guess. They're going to come down this end in the kind of handle of the wand, and I would say about a third of the wand is going to be handle. Okay, so I'm keeping this section square because I want to put some decorations and things on it a bit later. All right. Good. Just going to tidy up this little bit here where it kind of sweeps into that that taper, and then we're going to start to perhaps put some shapes up in the handle here. So remember, we've got our square edges here, so I'm not going to put my hand anywhere near that. I'm just gently advancing the skew with this thumb as support. We're pushing along with that one. And I'm just holding on to the back of the tool rest there. Just wanted to blend that in a little bit so it's a little bit tidier. Good. Now, I want to put some information up here. I'm quite happy with the finish and the shape on that end. We will part this off a bit later down this end. Okay, so this is going to have a little rounded cut on the end here. I've kept it, you know, a little bit chunkier than I ought to because I think there's a bit of vibration going on through this mulberry, and I don't want to take it too thin and potentially snap it. Okay, so this bit is just like doing a V cut. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, sorry, just turn the lathe off. I want to reposition my my tool rest. So I'm coming back ever so slightly. And we want this tip to be going bang on center. I've put the skew up on its spine, and we're going to start to make a few little V cuts in this square section. So we've got some nice, nice right angled, almost like beads, I guess. So going in nice and straight with the skew. And then just tipping it over gently and chasing down to that little cut. And just keep going until you've got a nice clean line in the bottom there. Just going to turn the lathe off and again and just have a look. Make sure we're down to around in that cut. And that gives it a really interesting, you know, really interesting little line and a sharp line. So this is almost going to be the grip on the handle. And I'm just eyeballing it next to the one next to it. And you could do them the same size, or you could make them bigger as you go. I think I'm going to go for kind of roughly the same size. And again, just eyeballing it down each one of these and make sure the V's are, you know, a fairly, you know, fairly similar to one another. And of course, you could mark this out with calipers. You know, you could measure each of these and mark them off as you go. And put a little bit more of that one, and we've got room for one more here. And being extra careful now, I'm really close to the chuck, so being really careful with these cuts. And I'm not going to come in that way. I feel that that's a little bit too close for comfort. I'm just going to gently tip over the skew and just tidy up that face on that side. But I've not come in at such a hard angle on that one. Good. So let's have a look. Let's see what we've got. I've got a kind of an idea, and you know, an idea of the shape that I've got in my head. So, you know, I think perhaps we'll go a little bit deeper with some of these. Not quite as pronounced as I thought they would be. So just chase them in, just that little bit deeper, all the way along. Nice quick little job. Just give them a little bit more definition. Good. So we kept that square edge on the kind of handle, but we've got these almost like square beads, really. Okay, so another question.
Of course, it's about the skew chisel. Is it a Colwyn Way skew chisel?
This is not. This is one of our Axminster wood turning. Okay, and so this is our nice affordable range. You've got a slightly shorter handle, but yeah, this is the kind of beginners or you know, a nice affordable set. So I'm just using the set of the Axminster wood turning ones today. But yeah, you could use the Colwyn Way, you could use the Jason Breach, you can use whatever skew you like. But for today, I'm you know, at home. I don't do a great deal of turning, so I use the more kind of affordable stuff, the more kind of day-to-day things. I'm not specialized in any of this, but absolutely you can use whatever you want, whatever you're comfortable with. And I had to go with one of Colwyn's the other day, and I really enjoyed it. A really nice kind of thin steel on that one.
And I'm not as savvy on the wood turning lingo, but Frederick's asked, have you ever tried off-center turning for the blade?
For the blade, this part
adds an interesting twist to the project. I'm not.
Yeah, so you could do a bit like this kind of stack of pennies and things like that. So you could have, you know, by shifting the axis here, you can step over and make all sorts of interesting shapes on these. But yeah, good idea. I've not done it, but I've seen some really nice thin kind of finials on top of boxes that look really cool, and that would look really nice as a wand. Quite often I'm looking for, you know, I make these with natural branch section, and they're quite often a little bit wavy. But again, we'll get to that at the end. And I think because I let Maria down with the old scroll saw, I think we'll revisit this and do a non-turned wand. We'll do one that we've hand shaped. So I'll get that booked in, and we perhaps use some resins and stuff as well. Cool. But yeah, off-center turning, that would look really smart. You need a bigger piece of timber because obviously you're shifting the axis. Cool. Okay, another question.
Maria's asked, can you show how you do a barley twist on one? I've done a couple, but they take time. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's our next thing. While we've still got it in the chuck, and we've got it you know, held on the center there, that's our next job. So I'm going to put a little twist along this. It's not going to be a barley twist. I'm going to do a spiral, but we'll explain how we do the barley twist, you know, as we go. Okay, so fairly happy with that. I want to just do a quick bit of sanding. So tool rest comes out, and I'm starting off at 240, so I'm already starting fairly high. Let's bring the lathe back on. Let's get some extraction going. Oops. Excuse me, slight technical hitch. So I had some cables falling down on me then. Okay, we're good. So I'm just going to bring the extractor in nice and close. I wouldn't. It moves the camera. Okay, so I moved the extractor then, and my my cable was on it, and I dropped the cable in front of the screen.
So apologies. So again, I'm just steadying the workpiece. I don't want to put too much pressure on. Don't want to flex or bend this in any way. And I'm coming up just gently into that square section to soften that in. So we've got a nice kind of consistent taper. Getting rid of any little white lines you may see. It come off pretty clean off the skew. That's why I'm not going too rough with the sandpaper. And again, being extra careful where this square section is. You kind of take it for granted that you know, you get used to something being there. And I'm definitely not going to move my hand any further than that point. But you know, very easy to get complacent and put your hand in the wrong place. So just be extra careful. That's good. So that was 240. Have a quick go over with a 400. And then we're going to look at the little barley twist, or a spiral I'm going to put on this one. So extraction can come back off. Okay, we've got the wand here. A little bit of tidying up and things to do, but we can do that on the other end. Okay.
Hiya. Chris said you mentioned that the timber was 10 to 12 mil, but what would the length be for that one?
Length on this one. Let me grab my rule. So this comes right to the back of the chuck there. So we are 12. It's about 16 inches the finished piece, and it's just over that in length, or we are about 400 mil long, 40 centimeters long. All right. But you can make them any size you want. You know, the length, again, if you want to list that, you know, if you think about, you know, where wands have become popular is Harry Potter. And when they go into Ollivander's shop, he'll say, this is, you know, a piece of mulberry, 16 inches long, dragon heartstrings, all that business. You know, list that. And when you're selling it, if you wanted to sell it, or if you're giving it as a gift, you know, the people really like to know those little details.
Steve here is asking, the turning speeds and the sanding speeds, are they different?
I didn't turn it down. I usually would turn that down. Yeah, so the turning speed was 2,500. But yeah, you want to drop that down to around about 1,000 for your sanding. I just quickly whizzed through it then because I'm eager to get onto the next stage. But you know, yeah, bring it down slightly for your sanding. Okay, good. So I've turned the lathe off now. I'm going to knock the speed right down, just in case, you know, we were to hit the button or something like that. I've got hands-on with our turning now, and I've got a little round file or round rasp. Okay, and we're going to start to put a little spiral along our wand. Okay, so my hands come into the back of the machine here. If we just go on camera 1 a minute, Jason. My hand's on the back of the spindle, and I'm just turning the spindle here. That's where I'm going to get my movement from on there. Okay, and so not turning the machine on, we're cranking it over by hand now. Okay, I'm going to look at where we're at on the wand. So we've got these little flats here. So let's go back overhead. We've got these little flats here, and I'm going to start my spiral kind of where those flats end. Okay, slight at an angle, and you could change the pitch of this if you wanted it to be a faster spiral. But for today, I'm just going to start at a little angle like this and start to make a little groove for this file to sit in. I'm then going to just gently crank it over by hand and just follow that little groove. You need to give it a bit of time to cut, so we're not whizzing it over too fast. We want the back end of that file to sit in the groove that we've already made. And don't worry about going too deep on the kind of the first pass. We're just getting things started. And we should see the other side of the twist coming over now. There it is. And I'm trying to keep this angle as best I can. You know, that same kind of diagonal angle. I say not going too deep just yet. It's finding its own path. We're getting a little bit of flex through this timber at this length. And you can see it's just working it back and forth, and it's finding its own path. Whoops. By staying in the groove. So just cutting a spiral all the way along. And it's a nice tool to use. It's not too grabby. It's doing its job. I'll go right the way along to the end there. And then we're going to start at the beginning again. Just take it all a little bit deeper. Being a little bit more rough with it. Now it's located. Just taking this spiral a little bit deeper. And you can see how that's working. Taking a little bit of material with each stroke. And I want this like an open spiral. You could do another start on this, and I'll show you that in just a moment. It's all a bit like a thread, like a two-start thread. Okay, so we've already got our little spiral in there. Let's go overhead and just see how that works. So you can see we've got our spiral coming along, and we can take that a bit deeper. We can open it up. I'll show you that in just a moment. Okay, so another question.
So we've got Woodwork Learner here asked, does it have to be solid wood or could you laminate some?
Yeah, you can laminate stuff. You can have some really nice, you know, could split it down the middle and have a two-tone thing going on. Quite often it's quite nice to use the sapwood. So you get that difference in color. Just be a bit careful if you're doing them, you know, gluing them that way. You need to make sure that they're properly fixed. So you might need to glue and dowel them. You might need to, actually one that I did, I've left the drill bit in it. So I've drilled the hole with a cheap drill bit, drilled the hole that way, taken it back out, drilled it the other way, and used that as a pin to hold the two pieces together. So, you know, laminating across that way is fine. Just be careful if you're doing little sections. You want to make sure that they're really nicely bonded right the way through. Okay, because as you can see on something with this length, when I was doing that skew cut, we were getting a fair bit of vibration. Sometimes that vibration can, you know, upset the glue, depending on what glue you're using, and shatter it. So just be careful if you're doing it in sections that way, but fine if you're gluing things along the length and turning them that way. Okay. So I've switched over now to a slightly less coarse and a slightly bigger file, round file or carving file. And I'm going to, first of all, just pick up on what we've done, just to tidy up the bottom of that. From that, that slightly rougher one. Okay, so another question.
Jenny's here asking, and I think you've probably just answered half of this anyway, but she said, do the files come in different grades, like the sandpaper? And did you say exactly what sort of file you were using?
So these are just little round files. You can get them in different grades. This one's a lot coarser. We do a Japanese one, which is almost like a threaded rod, really, but a lot sharper. But yeah, there's all sorts of different ones on the market. You know, the little chainsaw sharpening type ones. They're about the right size for doing something like this. But this is just a handleless file. We've made this little handle to go on it to give us something to grip onto. But just a round file. Yeah. All right. But yeah, you can get them in all sorts of different grits and grades. Not grits, grades, I guess. Or different coarseness, different teeth. This one's a lot smoother. So it's going to give us a better finish down in the bottom of that spiral, which is quite a difficult thing. You know, when it comes to finishing these, you know, you can't really get a bit of sandpaper down in there. You'll kind of ruin the shape of it. So we want a good, decent finish. So I would definitely recommend finishing off with a finer file. Now, if you wanted this to be a barley twist, you need to pick up on the kind of opposite side where this one starts. Okay, and you could turn that over, and you would make another start there, and that cut would follow your direction of your spiral, and you just keep going deeper and deeper until they become like a kind of helix shape. Okay, but for today we're just going with this open spiral. And what I'm doing now, I've been right the way along and kind of tidied up the bottom face, and we've got a slight kind of ragged edge, you know, where the file's just been hitting on the side grain there, or the end grain. What I'm going to do now is just throw the angle of that over. So let's go overhead. So at the moment we're cutting it like that, but I'm going to bring the angle of this over to try and open up this this spiral a little bit. So just throwing it at a slight angle. And that's going to take off those hard edges and make it a little bit wider. It just tidies the whole thing up. You could go a bit deeper if you wanted. Good. So we've got a little spiral now on our wand. That's looking really good. You could bring it up here if you wanted, or you could even carve that into a cool shape. You could do I don't know, like a little snake or something coming in. You'd be in the House of Slytherin. Okay. So another question.
Not so much a question, but Lawrence is asking if you can do some pyrography on a similar one.
Yeah, well, again, we've got one ready to show you. So what we're doing here is we're just giving you a few ideas of ones. At the end, when we finish this demo, I'm going to show you a few examples of other ones that I've done. Okay.
Giving you lots of ideas for your next one making session.
Lots of ideas. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So I'm just going to part this one off now. Again, you could put a bit more work into that if you wanted to, make it bang on. This I'm just going to part off at this end, and I'm going to use that same kind of V cut that we did with our skew. So I got my skew. I've bring the lathe speed back down, taking a bit of material, so we're not quite sure 100% what this is going to do when we turn the lathe back on. Feels nice and stable, sounds nice and stable. Not going to quite go up to my 2,500 this time. I'm on about 1,700 there, and I'm just going to do a little V cut. Again, just stabilizing the workpiece. taking it down to it's almost there. I jabbed the end of the one there, so I'm just going to smooth that in. I'm going to do a little bit of scraping and get rid of that mark I made, that horrible mark. And just swinging the handle of the skew out for a little scrape, and that gives us a nice little rounded end. And just using that little V-cut side to side, and this should just let go in a moment. There it goes. So I'm not going to do any more with the skew there. Let's turn the lathe off. And of course you could use a little saw or something to tidy that up. I'm right down on that little nib now. Take that off, and I'm just going to hand sand the end of that off. Tool rest out the way. And again, now we haven't got that support from both ends. I want to be a bit careful, so I'm not turning the lathe on. I'm just going to soften that little pip off. And there we go, we're happy with that. So I'm going to remove it from the chuck now. We're likely to have a couple of little bruises up on this square section. So if I just show you there, just where we've gripped on with our jaws. But I quite like doing a bit of pyrography and stuff, and having that little square section there gives us a nice little platform to be able to do some of that. So the wand itself, I'm reversing in the chuck. It's going down in that little hollow. And I want to just do a quick little pommel or something on the end. So the wand can go right in as far as it will. Remember, we're hollow through the headstock there. So that the whole body of that wand has kind of been tucked away. And we don't need to worry about it whipping around or anything. Now we've got this little section on the end here that we can kind of play around with. Okay, so again, I'm just going to use this as a scraper. Let's come in a bit closer. Move the extraction out the way and just bring that in nice and close. And just check our height. I want to come up a touch. And I'm just going to round this end off. You could do your little planing cut here. Almost like rolling a little bead. But for ease, I'm just going to scrape that in. And give that a nice little round. And then I'm going to do another little V cut here. And this is going to act like a little kind of pommel or a little finishing detail. Oops. Let's just scrape that side in. Good. Off of the lathe. I'm going to swing this around. And just give some little circles on the end. So I'm using the very tip of the skew now, just to put a couple of little circles on our little pommel. And coming out the way. Looks a little bit rough and ragged, so I'm just going to pop the sandpaper off, get rid of any of those kind of loose fibers, extraction back on. And just soften in that round. There we go. So there's our wand. Okay, we've got a little bit of decoration, and that for me is kind of stage one done. Okay, so we've done the turning. I would then take that across and do some pyro on it. You know, perhaps put some color or some waxes and things. Got a little kind of detail on the end there. We've got another question come through.
Yeah, Maria's asked, do you ever use the wire burning wires to add any decoration?
You can do. I don't. I don't like using those wires and things on the lathe. Quite often we'll use a little wooden wedge. They're a bit less likely to to get entangled with. But yeah, I tend to use a little slither, a little wedge to make those burns. But you could certainly pick out all the detail in here with a little burn. So if we just come overhead, that's lovely. So you could put a little wedge in this and just scorch the surface through friction. Okay, and that'll really define all of this. But I love pyro, so I would take this across and use my little pyrography pen to get that just right. Okay. So I just wanted to show you some other examples and perhaps talk through, different ways you could do this. I make a few ones in my time. We've got one similar to one that we've made today, perhaps a little bit thinner, a little bit more refined. That one there. Different lengths. You can use different lengths for these. This is one I'm really happy with. So let's go overhead. That's one I've turned. That's a bit of boxwood. We've got the pyro on there. We've done some little details with the pyrography pen. And then a bit of driftwood for the handle. And all we've done for that is to drill a hole on that side. And before parting this bit off, we've sized that to the drill bit that we're going to stick it in. So as an example, I've got another one here that's kind of, part finished. So we've got an ash wand and then this kind of twisted vine as a handle. So that's a kind of work in progress. But you can see where we've drilled the hole just with a standard drill bit, and we've cut the little tenon to match. And there's a slight taper to that. And I would use a bit of epoxy resin to glue that in the handle, and then we'll just carve things in, perhaps sand off any of the little sharp bits. So that's another way that you could make these. You could turn sections, use natural branched for handles, and they come out really nice. They get that real kind of natural look to them. But certainly you can decorate them. I've used a bit of pyro on this one. And again, remember, we can have different size wands for different size witches and wizards. This one, I've used a little pyrography tip to burn in the circles, a bit like we do with the texturing on the pyro, and then just a little bit of gold gilt cream to really bring that alive. Okay. So that's not the end of our wand journey. Apparently, we're going to do some bit of scroll sawing. We're going to use some resins and things like that to do something a bit more kind of natural, I guess. And we won't use any turning on it. We'll use hand tools. I really like. I've shown you before in the carving, the POWERFILE to shape things. So I've got a few bits ready, and again, when I'm out and about, I'm always looking in the hedgerows and trying to find unusual bits of wood that perhaps might make a wand themselves. You don't need to do much work on that to make it into a lovely lovely natural piece. So always keep your eye out in the hedgerows, get some really cool bits for handles or things like that. Really nicely aged bits of timber. And some of these, like I say, you can pick them up off the floor and you're ready to cast spells straight away. Join us again tomorrow. Jason's going to be in the hand tool workshop. He's cutting mortise and tenons. So come back, join Jason tomorrow, and see that. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.